In addition to being a great place for coverage of UConn football, men's basketball, and women's basketball, the UConn blog is the only media outlet which covers the Huskies soccer teams, ice hockey, and baseball team as well. And here to chat about the soccer teams with us is Daniel Connolly. Dan, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thanks. So the fall season is very much underway. We're right in the middle of September. So let's talk about the soccer teams. The women had a pretty good season last year. They ended 19-3, won the AAC regular season and conference tournament, and then bowed out in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Lost a couple of key players this offseason, correct?
Yeah, I mean, they lost their two leading goal scorers, which I believe accounted for 91% of their goals, in Rachel Hill, who's one of the greatest UConn soccer players in history, and then Steph Ribeiro. And then they also lost Emily Armstrong in goal, who was a starter for 4 years. And then they also lost Toriana Patterson, their starting center defender, and then Maddie Dom, who was a key cog in the middle of the defense. So coming into the year, we knew that goal scoring was going to be an issue, losing those players. And obviously it's tough replacing a 4-year starter in goal.
Mm-hmm. So who do you expect to kind of fill that void from a scoring perspective?
Definitely Tess Elmore. She's a freshman, comes in from Liverpool, England. She missed the first 2 games of the year due to NCAA clearing issues. The grades hadn't transferred over from England, but she is unbelievable as a freshman. I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say she's the most talented freshman since Rachel Hill. She's very technical with the ball, and she's really good at beating defenders, and she's got great vision. So she's only played since the 3rd game, but she already has 5 goals to her credit. She scored the game winner against Central Connecticut. She scored the game winner in overtime against Arkansas. So she's been a huge player. Alexa Casimiro is a returning goal scorer from last year. She only had 2, but that still leads everyone. She had a goal against Arkansas, and she's definitely made an impact up top.
So looking at the Huskies' record right now for Len DeSantis' squad, they're 2-3-2. You mentioned wins over Central Connecticut and Arkansas. They tied Fordham and Syracuse, and then lost to Yale, Rutgers, and St. John's. All 3 of those losses came in a row. What do you make of their start so far?
Yeah, they've definitely picked it up in the last couple weeks. It really helped getting Tess Elmore back. They had a stretch for a little while where they went 3 straight games without scoring a goal. They seem to have fixed those problems for the most part. Goalkeeping is really an issue right now. They brought in TCU transfer Courtney Hofer, but she's been out with not a concussion, but concussion-like symptoms. They've had redshirt freshman Molly Kerrigan, and she still needs time to really develop, and she's been a bit of an issue back there. So they really need to figure out who's going to score besides Kess, because if a team shuts her down, they're in trouble. And they need to hope that Courtney gets healthy soon.
And so, again, I know it's still fairly early in the season, but what is your outlook for, kind of how this season may play out, and what reasonable expectations are, and maybe kind of what the ceiling of this team might be?
Yeah, obviously, I think it would be fair to classify it as a rebuilding year. They have a ton of talent, but most of that's in freshmen and sophomores, and Santier keeps saying how they've got the talent, it just needs to mature. So I think you're going to see some ugly losses here and there, like a 1-0 loss to Yale or loss to St. John's. But if they can keep building, get those players that I mentioned back, find some scoring, and that talent matures over the course of the season, I don't think there's any reason they can't make the NCAA tournament.
All right. Well, good to hear. Would be nice to keep that streak going. Thank you for the update on the women's team. Let's move on to the men. Safe to say it was a disappointing 2016 campaign for the Huskies. They started off pretty strong, but then ended with a rash of disappointing losses, including a first-round exit in the AAC tournament. How is the team changed from a personnel perspective from last year to this year?
Yeah, obviously the biggest losses come in Kwame Iwua and Jake Nerwinski, who are both draft picks to the MLS and are both playing for their respective teams. They also lost Simon Olafson. He was their center defender last season. He transferred to Florida International. But they brought in a couple talented freshmen, including Austin Da Silva, and they also brought in a transfer, David Dachau, up top. So obviously, we'll get into it in a bit, but they haven't made a huge difference. But they seem to be coming along.
Started the season with a tough 2-overtime loss to Iona, but I think kind of like, as you were implying, they seem to have picked it up, put the pieces together, got a win against Quinnipiac, and have looked pretty solid in games against ranked opponents Notre Dame and Georgetown, coming away with a close loss to Notre Dame. A tie against Georgetown. Both of those games were at home. And then on Tuesday night, beating Hofstra. So who has stood out for you so far this year as the Huskies have gotten off to a 2-2-1 start?
Yeah, goal scoring is a big issue up top. I mean, they have 3 goals this season, which is just unacceptable. But if there is a bright side, the defense has been really strong. Scott Levine, the goalkeeper's looked really good. Dylan Greenberg has been an animal in back. I mean, he just plays like no one's going to stop him. And honestly, sometimes it's hard for people to stop him. They really haven't been killed in back much. And then up top, you can see the flashes from a freshman like Austin Da Silva up top. And then junior Abdu Baki John. He's got the talent. It just seems like sometimes he's a little hesitant to shoot it. And that comes back to bite him when he has a chance to take a shot at the goal, but he tries to dribble and find a better chance, and then he loses the ball or they can't get a shot off.
All right. Well, again, same question as with the women's team. I know it's pretty early in the season, but what's your outlook for this season? How are they looking in terms of competing in the conference? And what does the ceiling look like for this year's team?
I mean, I think every year. I don't think UConn men's soccer should be making the NCAA tournament every single season, really. That's how it was for pretty much the entire time Roy Reed's been here. He's missed it twice, and one of those was last year. They can't miss it again. To really figure out where they're going to go, they need to score. If they don't start scoring, they're not going to go anywhere. I mean, getting 1 goal against Hofstra is not really acceptable. They should have beaten Hofstra by 2 or 3. They had their chances. Same thing with Iona and Quinnipiac. They dominated those games and just couldn't finish. And even against the ranked opponents, I feel like there were times they were outplaying Notre Dame. They were outplaying Georgetown, and they just can't put the ball in the back of the net. So they have the talent to compete with those teams. And if they can just find some scorers up top, I think it could be a team that can make a run in the NCAA tournament, but that's a big if.
Mm-hmm. What about within the conference? Do you see them being able to at least make a splash there?
Yeah, I think they'll be one of the top teams in the conference, much like they are every year. It's just, can they separate themselves like they have the ability to from the other teams? I mean, the American Conference isn't anything special in terms of soccer, so their non-conference schedule is really loaded. So since they're holding their own with teams like Georgetown, Notre Dame, I think every single game is going to be competitive, and for the most part, they'll have a chance to win every one, and it's just a matter if they do.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Dan. The men's soccer team, in terms of upcoming schedule, they have North Florida on September 16th. They'll be at Temple Saturday, September 23rd. Have a couple of interesting non-conference games, September 26th against Providence, October 2nd against Maryland. Those are both home games. So be sure to check those out if you can. And for the women's team, upcoming schedule is Thursday, they host Long Beach State. Sunday, the 17th, they'll host Colorado College. And then on Thursday, September 28th, they'll get the conference slate. They'll begin the conference slate against Cincinnati. So, again, be sure to support the Huskies if you can. And Dan, thank you for the update.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, cool.